This is the May 19th, 2025 GUAC maintainers meeting. As a regular reminder, this meeting is subject to the LF antitrust policy and the OpenSSF code of conduct, and it is being recorded and will be on our YouTube channel later. Don't see anyone new, so topics to discuss.
I hear just a note from our side about the community stuff and our legal. I think we're good to go, so there were no any questions asked. So that's good. Any updates from the OpenSSF?
None that they have said to me. Mike, have you heard anything?
No, but they tend to take a while. So what is funny is uh for the licensing bit, they run two things, one of which is clearly defined. Uh, but of course, funny. The other thing that they run is they do run like some script that just looks like it's essentially they just grep for license names that don't match Apache and try and figure out if any of them sort of generally live in any of your files. So if you have a file that has GPL at the top, they're going to go and say, hey, the other thing that we don't have to do, but they sort of say, oh, we'd love it if everybody put an SPDX identifier at the top of every single file. We don't do that. I've started doing that for my new projects just to start to in case I ever needed to go through LF stuff again. But yeah, they don't necessarily, they just kind of they say, hey, you should do that. But they just do a quick search. And like, for example, one of the things that had happened to us, and we just had to say, no, it's not a big deal is when we were contributing GUAC to OpenSSF, they did a search and they were like, "Hey, what's up with all of these like AGPL and GPL things?" And we're like, "Those are in the tests. Those are not real. Like, we're not actually including those. That's like test data." And they're like, "Yeah, okay, fine," and that was it. But again, for the most part, it's like one of those they just have a backlog and eventually they'll click the button to run the script and then they'll just spend the hour just kind of going through and making sure is there anything that seems super suspicious. But we can kind of ping them every now and again just to kind of see if we could kick it up higher. Again, as far as I know, they're just running a script that runs a couple of things and that's it.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah, so I had a note for myself to actually check our licenses. Like we are declaring ourselves as a Apache license, but yeah, let's make sure.
Anything else on this one? Okay. I did add a couple 1.0 status notes. First of all, the blog process is initiated, which is basically I sent the email. I'm waiting to hear back, if they have any input on that messaging doc we put together or, what they want us to do next. The other thing I think that the only thing that kind of is left, as far as I can remember, is moving the Helm charts repo from the Kusari org into the GuacSec org. I figure it's like Parth, Mike, Jeff are probably the three people who have sufficient privileges on both ends. So it's kind of a nudge to somebody to move that repo. That should be pretty straightforward, I think. And then we'll need to add the Postgres support to that Helm chart once that's done. Then other than that, I think we're kind of just once we get the Helm chart done, I think we can push the button whenever we want. Um, if we can get a timeline in the next few days of when OpenSSF can like publish the blog post, obviously we'll want to try and have those happen as close together as possible, just to have one big announcement as opposed to stuff going out at different times. But Anything else on 1.0? Okay. I also had one sort of processy question. Um, so now that I have reviewer access on the GUAC visualizer repo, I have the ability to, write to the repo. But one thing that's not really clear from our governance documentation is if I wanted to, put out a new release of GUAC visualizer because it includes something, um, is reviewer sufficient level of privilege for that, or should that properly go through somebody with, owner or maintainer access? I think for the visualizer, maybe we don't really care one way or another. Um, but, because it's in a separate repo as a separate deliverable, it's not really kind of covered by our existing docs. So I just wanted to make sure that we know how we want to handle that.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, so the TLDR is as a person with reviewer access on the GUAC visualizer, am I permitted to, by policy, not by technical, to push out a new release of GUAC visualizer if there was a need for it, or does that have to go through, like, is the proper channels, somebody with owner or maintainer access on that
I
area?
see. Yeah, I feel like we should maybe update the governance a little bit to say experimental repos. Like, I feel like some of what you just said probably makes sense for like a full release of GUAC, right? But for the stuff like, and this is a thing that I've also brought up to the OpenSSF that we should uh there should be a formalization of everybody runs their own project the way that they want, and I think we don't want to kind of provide, but I feel like there should be general guidelines for like when we communicate to our downstream consumers, like what are we trying to communicate? Like when we communicate the guac, like the full-fledged guac, right? Like that is like a release that requires a higher level of governance than, hey, this POC thing, which I would almost say again that like we might even want to say, hey, it's okay that reviewers don't get that access, but we should be significantly more, um, what's the word? Open with giving maintainer level access to experimental repos that don't necessarily, like I can imagine again if we go and say, hey, we created a new GUAC CLI tool that we wanted to test out. It's not part of the full-fledged GUAC release and we want to iterate on it quickly, if we were to go in and say we need like board approval for a release, that's going to be a nightmare. So I think the thing I would throw back to you is, yeah, we can go and say, hey, release the reviewer gets that maybe for experimental repos, or we can say give it an hour of thinking and say, here's a better proposal for, maybe there should be something like maintainer of experimental repo or something like that as a thing we add in. Um, but at the end of the day, the goal is the right one, right? The goal
Right.
of making this simpler for stuff like that, I think makes sense. And I think the same thing goes with like when we bring on um, the Trustify/Trustification stuff, right? I am, essentially, I have a feeling, at least for several months, um, the Red Hat maintainers and anybody else who maybe maintained Trustification are going to be the only people who know how to push that out. And so, like, I would, say, yeah, I do, like, even though technically I'm an owner of the org, I would want to not touch that at all because I don't know that code base. So I think that it's probably worth, again, not like here is a, a 30-page treatise on like how to approach this, but I think some basic thinking might be worthwhile.
Yeah, and I think the visualizer is a little bit of a special case in that, like, it's definitely experimental, and but it's like it's not really being actively developed at this point. And like I don't really know Node, so most of what I do is like sort of the maintenance level stuff. And so like it feels a little weird for me to be like, yes, I should be an owner. Like that's why I asked for a reviewer on it, not owner, because I don't feel like I have the technical knowledge to call myself an owner of that. But also it's like, yeah, so if it was something we were actively developing, I would be like, yes, owner level should be required for submitting a release. For this, it's like, I don't know. What is it really?
Yeah, I do think that there is like uh an open question uh around there is an open question just around like do we have the right setup for the roles to begin with? Like, should we iterate on that? Because yeah, I agree with you that, yes, should I mean, I know this is a recorded call, but it's like, should
Mhm.
I still have like owner access to GUAC itself? I should probably have some level of architecture approval, right? But I haven't really, other than, my once every quarter, I'll open up a PR that fixes a line or updates a thing or whatever, but I don't really write much on the actual Go code anymore. But there are probably other things that, I should still do. And so I think it's probably worth thinking through again. Like, I think the short term. So anyway, my 2 cents is short term reviewer access. Long term, we should probably rethink our ladder a little bit, and maybe we can kind of come to a new agreement on some other stuff. Because I think we even talked about this before, where we could give folks reviewer access to specific things of like, hey, you're reviewer, or you are essentially code owner of, when we were thinking about supporting multiple backends of, hey, you're a reviewer or owner of this backend. But now that that's kind of shifted a little bit, it might just be, hey, you're the owner of these experimental repos and you're the owner of trustification and yada yada, and we kind of go from there. And you know, I think I would lean on you, Ben, a little bit, having done this at a broader scale for stuff like Fedora. What are your thoughts on this? And I know LF maybe even has a playbook on how they've done this for like Kubernetes. And again, we're not the scope of Kubernetes, but we don't want to run into the same challenges as Kubernetes has over the years in some of their governance.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give it some thought. I think sort of initially, I think the community merge stuff is a really good opportunity to revisit some of this. And I think, maybe rethinking our permission levels in terms of the repo, like on a per repo basis, as opposed to like sections of a repo like we have with, sort of the current ladder focused on guac stuff now, probably makes more sense in terms of how we've like sort of the way we've naturally evolved. But I'm definitely open to other thoughts as well. All right. Oh,
Yeah.
Jeff, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just to say I agree with Mike. So I think, realistically, yeah, Ben, please make the release. And
Mhm.
uh I think there's probably like some clause for things that aren't listed can be maintained ad hoc or separately, you know. And separately, even in the current situation, Ben, I think it would make sense for you to request to be owner if you're the one that's really owning it right now.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be a declarative, uh, I am the owner of everything, or it could be, I am doing this right now. I am making these releases and bumping these version numbers. That totally is
Mhm.
fine.
All right. All right. Anything else? All right. I assume we'll want to go ahead and consider Monday's next week's canceled because of the U.S. holiday.
I certainly hope so.
I mean, we could not cancel it, but I think most of us won't be here. So, all right, I will take care of that with OpenSSF operations to get that off the calendar, which means our next meeting will be Monday, June 2nd.